be a basic introduction to what economics is all about. What is economics? Economics is the study of how people, particularly people living in groups, coordinate their wants and needs. Right? We all live together. We all have different wants and needs. We all have to cooperate with each other so that we get as many of those wants and needs met as we can, given the time and resources we have available to us. So economics talks about the decision-making process. How do societies, how do groups of people go about deciding, how are we going to get all the things we need to keep us happy, right? Every society has a process or has a number of processes for sort of, sorting things out amongst themselves, okay? Sometimes, particularly this day and age, we have very scientific processes for sorting out what makes sense to do, what not to do. We'll talk what that means. In other cultures and other times, we have religious ways of sort of, spiritual, faith-based ways to sort out who's going to do what and what their obligations are and things like that, okay? Sometimes we rely on a very centralized source of making decisions. We have a king, a dictator, some oligarchy who will sort of make all the decisions for everybody, right? In other cases, like what we have here, we all make decisions, right? Then sort of collectively we then make a decision based on our own individual decisions, okay? So when you study a society or you study an economy, you're looking at how do they make these decisions? What are the principles and rules they follow? What are the customs? And basically, hopefully you'll realize at some point, you realize that how you describe one society or culture from another is predominantly differentiating these different decision-making processes. That's really the only thing that makes people different from each other, is some people use this kind of approach and this kind of thought process to sort of coordinate things, and other societies use a different set of rules and principles to make these decisions. And it's understanding how different decisions are made in the different institutions is what economics is all about. So here, of course, for our purposes, we're going to study how our society works. That's our goal, for you to understand how this group of people in this country, in this time today, sort things out. How do we get through the day? Okay, that's your goal. We look at social institutions, right? Every society has, and by institutions we don't mean, prisons and jails and schools. We mean, customs and thoughts and sort of maybe rules of maybe morality and such that guide us and tell us, this is what we should do in this situation or not do in that situation. So economics looks at social customs to some extent too, to describe how people do things. And then, of course, everything is done in some kind of political context, right? When you have a group of people, you have politics. You can't avoid it, right? So we have to have some political system that determines how these decisions are made, okay? And so we'll talk about how our system works. We'll talk about how our government works, but we'll talk about how our, how politics in a democratic society interplays with economic decision making, okay? So, economics, and this is what made economics so fascinating to me, is economics is a fairly broad-based discipline. It's trying to describe, in very broad, comprehensive terms, how do groups of people go about sort of getting along with each other and getting things done and living as happily as they can. That's what it's all about. And these rules, change throughout time. They change in different societies. But there are certain sort of eternal rules, we might call them laws or principles, that are true everywhere all the time, right? And and there are certain, in our society, there are some of these that we let drive and determine a lot of things about how we live our lives, right? Whether how you get to go to school, how you get medical treatment, how much time off you get. And we have lots of principles that sort of guide us to sort of determine all these things for us, and you need to understand how that all works. Now, basically, we say make decisions, we say make choices, right? We're talking about how do we take the resources we've got and turn them into the things we want to make our lives easy or just survivable, right? How do we take, the land we've got, the raw materials we have access to, how do we take those things and transform them into, the food, the clothing, the shelter, all the things you need to actually live, right? And every society has to do this. We all have to do this all the time. We all have to transform things that aren't useful to us in their native sense into finished things that actually serve a purpose to us, okay? So we have to decide what are those things we want. What do we want to make with our resources, okay? We have to decide how we're going to go about doing it. How are we going to what the process we're going to use? What are the tools and technologies we're going to use to transform these things from one form to another? And then we have to decide who gets to enjoy these things, right? We don't. Different societies have different rules about who gets how much of the finished stuff, right? Some cases everybody gets the same. In other cases, like here, you don't. But there are rules to decide how much stuff you get access to, okay? Every society has to have a process to sort these things out. What are we going to make, right? How are we going to go about doing it? And then who gets the finished things when they're all done? Every society has to do this. You cannot not do this. The essence of being a person is making these three decisions. You're always part of it, okay? So our goal here is to understand how our society, how our system today works to answer these questions. So economics is not actually, as I like to say, a very useful subject. It has very little practical applications. If you're looking to learn how to do something, this is not the class to take. If you want to be wise, this is the class to take, right? Economics is not it's not a spreadsheet. It's not something you learn to do your taxes or to figure out how to start a company up, right? Or how to incorporate it. That's not what we're going to talk about. Not in any way, shape, or form, okay? Economics is a way of an intellectual, analytical method to go about making decisions and solving problems. Okay, that's what it is. It's a rational, scientific system to decide, is this something we should be doing or not doing? All right. So it's learning a mental process. It's a thought process, and ideally, if you think things through correctly, and in economic terms, that means as an economist would, we assume you'll make good decisions generally in life. All right. So what economics is going to give you is not the answers to all your questions in life, but it's going to give you a way to go about solving problems and answering questions from a business and an economic standpoint as you go through life, right? If you think about it, it's kind of a toolkit rather than just sort of a collection of answers. And that's what makes this class kind of difficult. In economics, we study how people coordinate their wants and needs, and we take into account things like the decision-making process, the social institutions, the political institutions that every society uses and operates under to sort of make things work.